Welcome to The Gap, where it's our mission to bridge the gap between javelin and baseball training styles.
I'm Brett Hart, coach at Grind Athlete Performance and founder of Hitman Performance.
I'm Dan Labadia, javelin coach at Southern Connecticut State University and the man behind Jacked Javelin.
Hope you guys enjoy the show.
All right, welcome to this episode of The Gap. Today we have Scott Fuchs with us today. He is a javelin legend on the podcasting realm, the first javelin podcast ever, the Through the Point podcast, which I was fortunate enough to be on 5 years ago, before Jack the Javelin, many years before Jack the Javelin was even around. And so, Scott, thanks for coming on. How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling good. Like we said before we started recording, I think it's nice to be on the opposite side because I know normally when I'd end the podcast, I'd have a lot of editing to do after that, but now I can just log off and enjoy my evenings. So I'll leave that to you guys, but I appreciate you having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, we are looking forward to this interview as well, and I'm not looking forward to the editing tomorrow.
I'm glad you have to do that, and I don't have to. I just have to sit here and talk.
Yeah, this is Brett's house, so it's a 50-50 split. I edit, it's at his house.
This is my old childhood room, actually. So my bed used to be over here. I had a picture of Derek Jeter hanging up. I had multiple pictures of Derek Jeter, and a lot of old stuff that needed to get gutted out and turned into a podcast room a little over a year ago.
You guys have made it look real pro, though. I like I said before, too, I like the clips. I see them on there, and you were explaining to me how I'm going to be displayed, but it's funny seeing it on like the back end of it, like how it really gets set up, but it really looks good on social media, so you guys do a good job.
I wish I filmed Dan painting because he hated it. He hated every second of it. He refused to tape any of the edges. He just didn't want to tape any of it. He just wanted to paint all over it.
Dude, I'm just like, give me the biggest part of the wall, and then everyone else do the fine lines.
That's a little more in line with how I'd be too, I think. So I get it.
So a big part of Scott's story, for those of you who don't know, was that he went from a Division III baseball player to an Olympic Trials Qualifier in the javelin in what, like 2 or 3 years?
3 college seasons, yeah.
So 3 college seasons. So a pretty drastic transformation that went from baseball to javelin. So really, in terms of the gap, that's like our bread and butter. It's literally the perfect guest to have on the show. So why don't you talk a little bit about what went into you leaving baseball, finding javelin, and then ending up transferring schools?
So baseball had been what I'd done my entire life. I mean, as obviously a young kid, you're doing a mix of other sports like middle school basketball, things along that nature, but I'd never done track and field until I got to college. So I mean, I'm skipping a little forward ahead, but I'd never done track and field until I started throwing javelin. But it was baseball all throughout high school. Pretty much 10-year-old on was travel baseball, and I was just really involved in it. And I played decently well in high school. I knew I had the ability to play in college, but I knew it wouldn't be Division I. So I was looking at Division III schools on the higher academic end was kind of my goal. So I ended up going to Knox College out of high school, and then I transferred to Beloit College after my first year. But baseball was, like I said, really a major portion of my life. And when I got to college and kind of that summer before, I started taking training seriously, whatever that meant to me at that point in time. But I weighed about 130, 135 pounds when I graduated high school, and I was 5'9", 5'10". But I started throwing. I was following some of the early driveline programs, weighted balls and different things like that. So when I got to college, I really wanted to make a good first impression, and I felt that going to a Division III school would give me a chance to play immediately. And we started the fall practices, and kind of when I got to those practices, I just really had no control of where the ball was going. Even playing catch, I don't know, reflecting on it now, if it was maybe just the nerves of wanting to make a good impression, but that entire fall, I mean, I'm honestly still, I don't think about it a lot, but like when I think about it, it's pretty embarrassing to me. I still find it embarrassing, as it was really bad. And I wouldn't say I got bullied, but people definitely would make jokes. But at that school, I was throwing pretty hard compared to, I guess, what a lot of the other people, especially the incoming freshmen, were throwing. So people knew I had potential, but it was, I'm not talking small misses. These are misses like balls to the backstop misses. Like
you're hitting the bull. You ever see Bull Durham?
Yes.
Yeah, you're hitting the bull. Were you a pitcher only? Did you just pitch, or did you play?
Most of high school, yeah. I played other positions my first and second year, and then I pretty much once I got to varsity, it was just pitcher only. And then I would hit in some JV games, and I was actually weirdly good in those games, like to the point that I would like maybe get a pinch hit at bat in a real game. I don't know why I could hit that. I guess it was very low level pitching I was great at, but when you get throwing a little harder and a little more movement, it was pretty tough. So I could feast off the low level pitches. But yeah, so mostly pitcher only.
Yeah, I always joke saying anything past 85, I just couldn't see. So anything below 85, I was pretty good. But as soon as it touched 86, I just couldn't see the ball anymore.
Well, now there's inflation on that too. Is like,
and now it's like 93. Now it's like 93.
Seriously.
I don't stand a chance.
I finished high school in 2015, and I remember 85 would be pretty good. Like that's pretty much up there. But now, I mean, you see 13-year-olds doing that on the regular. So it's, definitely some inflation on velocity. But at that point in time, I would agree with you. 85 was about the limit.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting, but like once mobility ability got dropped, the velo in the baseball community started going through the roof. So might be something there.
Absolutely. I mean, we're going to talk about more training later, but that's been a huge part of my career as well. So
what was your biggest shift from not wanting to play baseball anymore and then trying something completely new that you've never even stepped into before?
So I'd love to tell you that it was my decision. It was not my decision to not play baseball anymore. So I transferred after my first year because I kind of thought those new issues that had come up for me were maybe situational. I don't need to get too far into that, but I didn't think it was the right fit for me. And the two schools I was between, I only contacted Beloit after I went to Knox because that was the other school I was deciding between when it came down to it at the end. And I was like, maybe that was the right decision. So I went there, had my first year there. They kept throwing me in JV games, but I was having a lot of the same problems where they knew I had talent, but it was just not consistent enough to be in a varsity game. So I didn't pitch any varsity innings my first year, but I played in a summer league, and I really worked that summer on trying to get better. And I played really well in the summer league. I forgot what I had ERA-wise. It was pretty low. But when I got back to the fall, it was more of the same stuff, and I couldn't really explain why. And eventually after the fall happened, it was not great. And the coach just called me into his office one day and was like, you're probably one of the most, or if not the most physically talented person we have, but we just can't have you on the team anymore. So I remember that day pretty clearly, and I was like deadlifting in the gym below where his office was. And I just this is the only time I've ever done this, but I just left all the weights on the bar and just left. So I felt bad about that. And it was a lot. Like that was serious heavy lifting days for me. So I was just like, I can't do this right now. And I just left him on there. So I apologize to whoever had to do that. So it actually wasn't my decision, which again is way removed from it now. It's not, obviously I've had many other things go well in my life, but it's still not something that I really actively try to talk about. But obviously for this podcast, I have no problem doing it. It's just, I don't know. It was, not easy, especially when I was playing well in the summer, took training very seriously at that point in time. I'd invested a lot of time and money into it, and it just, for whatever reason, just wasn't working.
So would you say that with baseball, would you say that maybe because you put so much time and effort into it your whole life, did that start to kind of lead to some just paralysis by analysis with the sport? And can you just talk a little bit about that?
I'd say that's fair to say, because in high school I was not really a command pitcher, but it would be walks in a reasonable manner. But as I mentioned, I mean, these were sometimes balls behind batters, or just spiking them into the dirt where it was really not close at all. But I think when I started taking training more seriously, I kind of got to that point that you're mentioning, as I spent so much time training, recording myself throwing, trying to do different velocity drills and things along that nature. Not that those are bad. Obviously, there's many people that do that with success. But for me, I think upping that level, or trying to think I could play some form of professional baseball at some point in time, maybe did give me a feeling of I have to do well because I've put in this time. So I guess that kind of goes to your point, is that's a little bit of what I felt, especially looking at it now and kind of thinking as we're talking. It wasn't clear to me at that point in time that was the case, because I thought, well, I put in all this work, it should just immediately translate, and it was just different. I mean, I did throw faster, and I was a lot stronger, and I could long toss really far, which kind of was what inspired me to think about javelin. But it was definitely, I would guess, something like that made it more difficult for me to perform when it really mattered on the field.
Yeah. So with the long toss and the velocity and the drive line programs, do you feel like that helped you like transition to javelin? Because I know that some people say that, standing throwing velocity with the 1K, the 2K, or the even just for distance like that, obviously that arm power might translate to further javelin throws, but some people argue that because javelin is such a dynamic event that it doesn't translate at all. So somebody that obviously when you pitch from a standstill, and then when you throw, you throw from a full approach. Where did you see that velocity translate to your javelin throw down the road?
So I was actually one of the first people I think, to do tread athletics or work with tread athletics, like right in 2016. I have the original shirt from when they first developed.
Dude, that's
where I kind of heard about javelin, because I think they had some tweets about someone who played baseball transitioning over.
Yeah, Kevin has talked about that a lot with because I think you and him were like early tread athletics people, like getting to know like Ben Brewster and stuff like that. And he even made a video the other day talking about Yamamoto's turbo jav and how he uses it to kind of uncoil and use the thoracic spine and the pelvis to lead the throw and keep his arm long. So I think Ben Brewster is secretly a javelin junkie. I think that's kind of what led to that. And then Ben Baguette is also, who I've been on his podcast. He's been big into the javelin training as well. So I think that there's through social media, I think that there's just been some overlap between the training styles, and obviously it's grown a decent amount.
100%, because this was 2016, 2017, pretty early on of those times where I'd seen that. And there was times where I thought, even when baseball, I was still on the team, I was thinking maybe I should do something else because it's really not going well. But when I made that transition over, I mean, at first I thought it would be pretty easy. I thought I was just like, okay, well, I can throw a baseball 320, 330 feet. Like, why can't I just throw this thing? And we started with the little, like the short turbo jabs, which, I mean, for kids or whatever, but I mean, I eventually got throwing those pretty well, but when we went outside, the real javelin was not like that at all for me. Yeah. So it took a little bit. And I also wanted to add this too, when you were sending some prep questions over, was when I first joined the team, it was maybe January, so around indoor season. And I was probably 5'10", 175, and they were I told him I wanted to do javelin. I went in the track coach office and I was just like, would you mind if I try this? And he said, of course not. But then they started having me do indoor weight. And nice. I was not the build of an indoor weight thrower at all. And I had never been on a track team, like I said earlier in the interview. And I just thought like being on a track team was weird. And I did not like this at all. I signed up to do javelin in my mind and not indoor weight. So I went to his office and I told him I wanted to quit because I just said, I don't want to do this at all. I just want to throw javelin. And he was like, okay, just do javelin. But then when we went outside, I mean, it definitely was not a quick transition in terms of day one. But we did a couple weeks of I would pretty much throw every day, which I wouldn't advise people I work with now to do, but it was more of just, I can't be bad at this. I need to just figure out how to throw it straight. So it wasn't fulls every day, obviously, but kind of go out to the stadium and just start throwing.
Yeah. No, I think that's so important. And as you were kind of alluding to with the turbo jav, I mean, people don't really realize, but the longer of a lever you're throwing, it just complicates things. And so, going from a ball to a turbo jav to, maybe a 600 to an 800 is like a normal progression. But it's one of those things that if you're holding that 800-gram javelin 8.5 feet long the first time, it's just pulling that from all the way back, throwing it through the point is a very difficult skill that people, you kind of just have that feeling. It's like riding a bike though, once you get it, you're not going to lose that feeling.
Yeah, I don't want to skip too forward too when you said to ask like what I'm doing now, but there's times where I still have to throw some javelins, and obviously it's not perfect, but it is somewhat like riding a bike where the people that I'm working with are like, damn, that's pretty good. I'm like, hey.
Yeah, coach has still got it. You start moving the arm a little bit. Yeah. We were talking about your Instagram a little bit before, and I was scrolling on a little bit, and I saw that you had a post with Mike Stein when you reached out, because he was similar baseball career background, transition to javelin, and then he asked the question that I think a lot of listeners, if they were thinking about transitioning from baseball to javelin, or anyone that wants to start javelin, he asks just what was that transition like, and what would be some pieces of advice you'd give either your earlier self or anyone new that would have the same question?
I think the biggest thing you can do is just somehow get access to a javelin and just throw it. I mean, that's really how I learned at the start, because we also didn't have a true throws coach at the school I was at either. So this was pretty much, that's why the Instagram became a thing, was it was prop my phone on a water bottle and film a video. And then what does it look like compared to what do I feel like is happening? But there's been a few people that have reached out to me in my area that are younger people that they've asked every question you could possibly ask about javelin, or how they could potentially join a team in college, or how they could get a Division I scholarship, but they've never even seen a javelin in real life. And to me, like, I think there's some, like, forthrows.com has some cheap options. Obviously not everyone's in the same financial situation, but I think for me, the biggest thing was going to the stadium when it was 20 degrees out or 30 degrees out and just throwing. Obviously, if you can do better weather than that, that'd be great. But I was willing to do it at that time because I just wanted to see how I could do it. And I had that feeling just that I need to be good at this, or I need to learn how to throw it. So I was just going all the time. So I guess the advice is not throw every day, but the advice is you just need to get a javelin in your hand and see if you really enjoy this. I mean, I think now we've seen more examples of people who have gone from baseball to javelin and had success, but it's definitely not a one-to-one crossover. So I think people maybe jump the gun a little bit too early and think because they've thrown maybe 90 miles an hour that they can just get a Division I scholarship. And now, especially, the NCAA landscape is changing a lot, so I don't even know anything about that at this point in time. But even previously, it was definitely not just handed out. I mean, maybe people would give you a walk-on opportunity, but I think it's really important to just try and get access to a javelin whatever way you can. Maybe contact a local college or something and just give it a shot.
Yeah, I actually had a kid last summer that he was sprinting on the track team and found my page and just really fell in love with the idea of javelin. And same thing to you, like, reached out, drove 4 hours, stayed in a hotel to get a private lesson with me the next day, had never touched a javelin before in person, and just got very, very humbled very quickly with how hard it was. And I felt very, very bad, but at the same time, I was like, it's one of those things where you have uninformed optimism of, you're like, oh, you look at that and it looks so appealing and almost simple, and then you quickly find out how hard it is, and then you now have the informed pessimism of what it actually means to try to be good at something, and how you can't compare your day one to someone else's year 5.
100%. And I actually give that person credit for taking a 4-hour drive and staying in a hotel. I mean, that's the next level of doing that, because, like I said, I've talked to people that it's just more like the first question is, hey, I'm a baseball player, I want to throw javelin, how can I get on a Division I team next year? I've received that question where it's like,
how do I do it right now? Tryouts are in a week.
Yeah, exactly. So that's just part of it that's hard. And I think I'm glad that person at least did that for you, because that's pretty cool on their end. Obviously it didn't work out, but at least they're willing to do that. But that's, really, I think just trying it, like you said, being humbled by it, but then some people are going to stick and some people are not. I mean, there's people I've worked with that they want to try it and they last a week. And then there's someone I'm working with right now that wanted to try it, and it's been 3 or 4 years now. So definitely just depends on the person, but I completely agree that it's not as easy as it looks.
Yeah. So when you go from throwing in the stadium at 20, 30 degrees over the winter, you're walking into the coach's office telling them, all right, listen, I don't want to do weight anymore, I just want to throw the javelin. Where does that transition to in the spring? How did you do that first year?
So I was not throwing very well in practice, but they were going to Myrtle Beach for spring break, and we were in Wisconsin, and they were taking a bus, and I'd been on the team for about 2 weeks, and I was like, I'm not ready for my first meet. I don't know any of these people, and I'm sure as hell not taking a 20-hour bus ride from Wisconsin to Myrtle Beach. So I ended up going to Cubs spring training with my parents. That's like the only spring break I've ever had. But then when we came back, it was maybe another week or two of just throwing outside, and I don't know what my expectations were. I think maybe 30 meters for the first meet was my first hope, and I ended up throwing 45. Nice. And it was, it was very cold that day, like probably about 30, near that time where they would decide to like call the meet for being too cold. But they ended up having it, and I ended up throwing 45, and I was pretty shocked. I think I got second or third place in my first meet ever, which was cool. And then I thought, okay, well, 50 meters seems pretty reasonable as a goal for the end of the season. I mean, I just threw 45 the first meet. Hopefully I can progress the next couple weeks. And we had maybe a week off. And then the second meet I threw 52. And then I PR'd every meet that season and ended up throwing 57 by the end. And the guy who passed me for second in that first meet never threw further than he did in that one meet. So wow. I was in second and he threw, I think, past, 46 or 47, passed me on that throw. And for 4 years, he never beat that throw.
Wow.
And then, so I was a little pissed I was in second. I thought there was a chance. And I also didn't know that throws from the prelims carried over to the finals because the guy was winning, like his elbow was bothering him. So he stopped throwing. And I was like, oh my God, I'm in first. Like I'm going to win. And they're like, no, those still count. And he was throwing in the 50s. So I knew it was kind of over then. But
yeah, it's funny too, like walking out to your first competition, you don't even really know how the meet works yet. You know, it just shows like how new you were to the sport. And so, you know, after that year you finish up throwing 57, then what does that off season look like? And then how did your next season go?
So that was my junior year of college. So my first ever first season was my junior year of college. So most of the time, like obviously you do senior year and I was on track to graduate. So I was thinking that I still wanted to throw though, because I knew obviously I had more eligibility left over because I did 2 years of baseball and just won a track. So I started going on TFRs and I was just looking at all the Division I conferences and seeing what schools were either my level or worse, because I was never planning on going to grad school, but I wanted to get hopefully some type of money, or I thought maybe there was a chance that it'd be a conference that I could score in or a team that needed someone to throw. So I just started contacting most of those schools, and this is pre-portal. So I had to go through my athletic director and she had to contact their athletic director to get a permission to contact, which was a whole process in and of itself. But I started working a little bit with Tom Puxtis because he actually lived maybe 45 minutes from me, which was kind of crazy because it was just like Illinois is not even a high school javelin place, but he lived, about 45 minutes away. And someone my dad worked with went to high school with him, and my dad went on a meeting and the guy was like, oh, someone from my high school, he was pretty good. And then we looked it up. I was like, yeah, he was pretty good.
Yeah, he was decent.
Yeah. So that was a little crazy. And then I just remember calling Tom, and then I said, this is my first year. I was just throwing. Can we do work together? Something. He's like, what did you end up throwing? And I said 57. He was like, holy crap, 57. He's like, okay, we actually have something here. So we ended up working with him a bit. I would drive down to him at a high school and we would throw a little bit. And then one time he said that I could go to the camp for free, but I had to get there somehow. And they were hosting something in South Dakota. So I drove by myself to South Dakota, got a hotel, and did the camp for a week, which was really cool. And I got to meet a lot of like the higher high school people at that time. So I felt, I'm only, I guess, maybe 3-4 years older than him, but I felt way older at the time because I was almost done with college and they were still in high school, but they were extremely good throwers. So
yeah, that's how I was last year when I went to the LSU camp. I went as an athlete, so I was 25, and then there was like 17-year-olds in my group, and it was just like, it was funny, but I mean, it is what it is. Best way to learn is by doing sometimes.
100%. And it was cool to be around people like that because in D3, I don't remember what I finished in our region, but I was pretty high up there where we didn't see a lot of people. I didn't ever seen anyone throw over 60. So there was a bunch of high schoolers throwing 65, 66, 67.
Jeez.
So even though they were younger, they were still very talented and accomplished at that point in time. So seeing that was pretty eye opening to me, and seeing them like all the offers they were getting, I was like, that's pretty cool. So that's what that first off season looked like. And then I just started training on my own and doing different stuff between that junior year to senior year. But we did, like I said, we had someone who would come maybe once or twice a week, but he coached all the throws. So it was a lot of time on my own.
Yeah. I mean, I always kind of give that advice to people that if you're going to go to a javelin, if you're going to go try to throw javelin in college, you should either go to a place that has a really good javelin program or a place that has no javelin program at all. So you could just train on your own, experiment, do new things, and then work with a private coach. So I know that you said you worked with Putzkis a little bit that first year, and then I know you worked with Bill Miller a little bit as well, and also Kevin Foster from Javelin Anatomy. So talk a little bit about that process. Like, when did you start working remotely with Kevin, and talk about Bill a little bit too, and kind of how they helped develop your career, since you didn't really have help at the collegiate level at the college that you were at?
So Bill was that summer was the first time I talked to him, and someone that I was on the baseball team with had known Bill, and Bill was only maybe 25, 30 minutes away from me. And I wanted to, since I had D1 aspirations or had aspirations to go throw after that, not just finishing my senior year and go on, I was like, I need to get someone who's actually going to provide like a true training program. Cause I think I had a notebook that was 3x10 shoulder press, 3x10 tricep extension. Like it was not a javelin program. Yeah. So it was not great. That's what I did the first year. Cause when I was done with baseball, I was just like, all right, I'll just get jacked, I guess. But, I obviously ended up getting a little more jacked, but in a more javelin specific way later on. But, the first time I met Bill, I went to his facility and he was catching a bullpen with like an infielder's glove in full gear. And I just had only seen Bill on social media and I thought he was the not most serious, but I just expected him to be like a really serious or hardo person. And he was just like, took the helmet off. He's like, "Are you Scott?" And I just remember that really clearly. But Bill has been he lives maybe, I don't know, 500 feet from me. Like he's really close by.
Wow. Nice.
But yeah, so Bill was huge for me. And Bill is just such a great person in general too. I mean, he'd be willing to do, still even to this day, would do probably anything for me. Bill is a really awesome guy. So that was when I really started working with him first, was I wanted to do some lifting. And I figured, well, I'd done some stuff with Tom, or there's some stuff I'd seen online. I'll kind of just keep doing that javelin stuff. And then I wanted some lifting. So I went into that season. I think I followed Kevin at the time, or it was right around the time Kevin had come out with his page. So I was following him or maybe sending a few DMs, but it wasn't anything formal. So I did a whole nother season with just kind of stuff on my own. And it was good, but it wasn't what I expected it to be. Throwing 57 in like 6 meets and maybe a month and a half of throwing, I thought, all right, well, 70's got to happen this year. I mean, I just did that so easily. And I ended up throwing 60, 41 one time. So I threw better, but it was just marginal. And it kind of, as you said, was humbling and learning that it's probably not going to come to me as easy as I thought it would.
Yeah. I mean, you see those plateaus that come with, when you get to that next level, it takes, again, another level of dedication and another level of understanding to get to that next step. I mean, I had a very similar situation where I went from 55 to 59, and I was like, wow, like, you know, that was my first meet back from Tommy John. I just jumped up 4 meters, and now I'm like, next meet, I'm going to jump up another 5, you know, and then it was like, yeah. And then it was, all right, at the end of my next year in grad school, I had only gone up to 60 that one throw, and then it was like, before you know it, college was over. So talk a little bit about, after you throw 60, that year you made D3 nationals, correct, with 60 meters? Yeah. Okay. How did that process go and get into D3 nationals? How did that go?
So I made it with 59.92, I believe was the number, which was the school record at that time. I threw it at our home meet on our last throw too, and my friend was recording with a formal camera, which was pretty cool. But then when we went to nationals, it was my third throw, and I was in the first flight, and that was the first time I ever called for the clap in like a postseason meet. So I got the crowd going. I was like, I don't know, I guess I need some juice, because that's what I'd called for when I threw the 59.92 as well. And I ended up throwing the 60.41 on my third throw, and I wouldn't have made the final if I didn't do that.
Wow.
So that was a very cool experience. And I ended up getting 7th. I don't remember if I was moved up or down, but I didn't throw any further than that. So I must have only been moved down. But I don't know what I was seated after the first round, but I was in the first flight and was able to make it through, which was really cool. I was seated maybe 13th or 14th, and I got 7th. So
sweet, that's awesome. Yeah, it's always good when you can duplicate your performance or PR at the national meet. That almost always guarantees that you're going to go All-American, which is top 8. Because we've always talked about that. It's like, if you look at what comes in 8th at the national meet, it's usually what it took to qualify. So if everyone was able to just throw what they did to qualify, they would end up being a Division I All-American or a Division III All-American, whatever division you're in. You kind of see that all across the board, but it's obviously always hard to peak at the right time, when the nerves are highest, when you have that competition anxiety or whatever, and then also at the end of the year, typically some guys are banged up with the elbow and the back and stuff like that. So you come in 7th place, Division III All-American, then you end up going to Iowa State And then is that when, after that season, is that when you started working with Kevin?
We started working a bit around that time. It was definitely my first year at Iowa State. And at that point in time, I was already committed to go there as well. And I was obviously feeling good about myself, but 60-41 is, I mean, I guess it's a Division I thrower, but obviously now we were talking like you're with the big dogs. There's some serious people throwing very far. So I knew that I kind of had to make that improvement, and I trained all summer. I was still working out with Bill. I don't think I was working with Kevin in that much at that point in time. And then when I got there in the fall, and this is something that I don't want to speak badly about anyone really on here. That's not my goal from it, but I'll just say when I got there, maybe the training for javelin was not what I was expecting. Mm-hmm. One of the main reasons I chose it, I mean, I had a good relationship with the coach too, but this was right before COVID, so I didn't know, even though I'd only done 2 seasons, I didn't know if I could get a 6th year, because now there's like 8th years, so I probably could have done it, but it was at that point in time, 6th year was kind of unheard of. And I actually TA'd a class at Iowa State, and all the schools I was talking to that were offering a scholarship said that first year I could get the scholarship while I was on the team, but if the 6th year appeal did not get granted, it would go away. So when I TA'd the class, it was an insane deal. It was like, I think it was 75% of in-state tuition, and in-state tuition was $10,000, so it went to $7,500, and then they paid me a $900 stipend per month, and I had an athletic scholarship on top of that. So it was basically a full ride in a way that's like not athletically, but I paid little to nothing to go there.
Oh, wow, that's awesome. So that kind of helped you be able to have the leeway of appealing for that 6th year, just in case you didn't get that.
Right.
Okay, gotcha.
And that was the concern, was there were schools offering more athletic money, but if that first year, if that appeal didn't get granted, obviously pre-COVID, we didn't know what was going to happen.
Yeah.
I was going to go from whatever price is going to be to sticker price, or like if there was any athletic or academic scholarship. So that was pretty concerning, but that was why I ended up going there. And I would say that fall was definitely the hardest semester I had, was just getting adjusted to the new life of being there, being a Division I athlete. And I remember vividly, I think I was working with Kevin with this, but there's one day that really changed my career, basically, was we had a practice either late November, early December, that I was so disgusted with what I saw on video and how I felt that it just like flipped a switch, that I just said I can't keep doing this, because I knew the season was coming up and I'm not going to get what I want if I do what I'm doing right now. And that was when we really clicked on like throwing with a dead arm. That was like the biggest thing, was I just looked at the video and it was just did not look right. Like some things just look right, and it's not the best coaching, but some things look right and some things look wrong, and that thing looked wrong. So I just said, Kevin, like, what can you do for me, or what can we do? Because I know I'm not going to get what I need out of this. And I had very clear goals especially it was even after that first 57-meter season. I wrote on a piece of paper that said, you will be a national champion and throw 70 meters, and just like stuck it to the wall. So 70 meters was always in my mind. The national champion thing, spoiler alert, didn't happen, but the 70 meters thing did. But that was very clear in my mind that I knew I wanted to go there, and I didn't want to go there just to say I was on a Division I team. I wanted to contribute and do something big. So that was when we really started doing it. And I just said, like, next day I went in the indoor track, threw a rubber tip javelin, and just threw it like my arm was just limp on the side. And I recorded the video, and I just was shocked at what came out. And I was just like, day to day, that worked. Like, it actually looked like what I thought it should look like. Obviously, it kind of works differently for everyone. No cue is the same, but that was like the day. And I remember when it happened. I have a video of that throw too, where it just clicked, where I was like, oh my gosh, like that's what I want to look like.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, sometimes those little things can just make the biggest difference if you're able to see it, feel it, and then put it into practice. And then, like we talked about riding a bike, like I'm sure after that day going forward, you were never like, oh, I'm going to tense up my arm and try to rip this thing. Right. You know, it's like,
and I don't mean to cut you off, but that's such a huge part that I try to work with the people I'm on. Is he had been saying dead arm for months, and I was too stubborn to listen, because I thought, well, I'm a baseball guy and my arm is my asset. Why would I turn that off?
Yeah.
And that was, like I said, but then I was using it, and it was just not looking like I said, what I needed to at all. And I just said, I need to try something else. So I was like, all right, what is this dead arm thing? Now really explain it to me. And he was just like, okay, throw like this. and I did it, and that's when I made the change. But that was really what I wanted to address was, in my head, I have a good arm. Why would I try to throw with no arm at all? Wouldn't that be completely defeating the purpose of what I have? And it obviously that is not the case, but that was like such a big moment for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about turning the arm off because you got to allow the body to do the work and let the energy flow through it. You know, sometimes if you're throwing with that active arm, you're going to jump the gun and try to do too much with it. And so that's the best way to do it, is just allow yourself to relax into that layback position and allow your chest and your hips to do the work. So was that kind of one of your biggest technique struggles, was just like getting over the fact of, okay, listen, I got this cannon of an arm. How do I get beyond that? Or were there some other technical issues that you had along the way, and how did you overcome those?
I mean, I definitely had my fair share of them. I would say that was the one that I could attribute most of the jump to. Of course, there's things you're working on, like the speed from back foot to front foot contact, or kind of landing in a position where you can let yourself rotate into the block and just get all the timing right. Because I was really, I guess, like walking the tightrope. I'm sure you know that, or you use that term too.
Yeah.
That was something that I really struggled with. So I had to find a way, or what worked for me, to get in the position that you see all the high level throwers doing. And I appreciate something, this is going a little forward, that you said the other day on one of your posts. I think we texted a little bit about it, was some people need to hear that they need to throw straight over the top, and some people need to like have a more relaxed arm, and it just depends on the person. And for me, like some of the cues that were being used just were digging me more into what I needed, or what I was already doing.
Yeah.
I didn't need more reassurance to do that. It was like I needed the opposite. And that's where Kevin provided a fresh lens. And Kevin or Bill, this is not it's an endorsement from me, but this is not a just you work with them and you immediately get everything that I got or more. It's going to be person to person. Obviously, there's many coaches out there that you can have success with, but what they were teaching and what we were doing like really transformed me to just understanding it differently, because I just felt like I said, I was just kind of driving myself. The things I was already doing, I was just doing more of it and not getting the opposite or getting what I needed from it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the post you're referring to is like how Jordan is someone that just from day one has an amazing hip shoulder separation, amazing layback position, and just really whippy arm, almost to the fault where sometimes he can just sling it down the right sector and just completely lose the tip. And then you have some other throwers that are they're just trying to stay closed and throw over the top because they've heard that their whole career. And it's like to the point where their elbow is just by their ear and they're throwing it like a football, getting no layback at all. And it's like, yeah, you need to be able to adapt what you're saying based on the athlete. So going into that year, that's the year that COVID hits. So you end up going back for a sixth year. Looking back, was that extra year of development crucial to you ending up throwing 72? Or do you feel like you could have thrown 72 your first year at Iowa State?
I don't think I would have thrown 72. I think I would have done a lot better than I had done years before, but I think that development was huge. And this is a little bit to go back, and as I said, I don't want to speak too badly, but a lot of the stuff I was doing with Kevin, I was doing at 5:30 or 6 in the morning in the public gym, and no one knew I was doing it. And I was dealing with a lot of back problems. There was a point I couldn't throw for probably 2 months other than the 2K ball into the wall. But I like any type of rotation really hurt, to the point I was getting like scans on my back because we thought something was really not right with it. And I could only do approach work and I only throw the 2K ball and I could lift. But as soon as I started rotating, that was pretty much it. But I would do a lot of it. And there was sometimes other coaches would see me early in the morning, just like, what are you doing here? And I would just go to the public gym and do like the skin the cat exercise when everyone was looking at me sideways. Like, but I had to find a way to do it because I knew at our current practice, and at that point I hadn't, to my coach's credit, I guess, I hadn't necessarily earned the right to do whatever I wanted.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I get where you're going with that too. Cause like, like you said, 60 meters, yeah, that's a Division I mark depending on where you go, but it's not like you're coming in throwing 80 and
right.
You're just going to be like the automatic All-American. You know what I mean? You still kind of had the point where obviously there was development to be made. But to my point earlier, it's like sometimes going to a place where you just have free reign and being able to work with that private coach in your facility. Like, I think Mike Stein's a great example of that. Like, Mike works with Kevin now at the University of Iowa, not Iowa State where you went, but the University of Iowa, and he's able to just have that free reign, and that obviously has translated to him throwing 81 meters as a sophomore because he has that intrinsic he has that intrinsic motivation, and he has that private coach, and he's able to execute on the plan freely, and so obviously that's worked out great for him.
Right, and his coach, because he has a coach there, obviously at a major Division I like that they're willing to put it together, and what he sees and what Kevin sees. I mean, I don't know the ins and outs of how their relationship works, but as you said, the coach, because I put that coach on to Mike Stein in whatever time, because he was actually just talking to me about some javelin stuff. This was right after the season was done, and he said, I just got the job here, and we were just talking shop on javelin stuff, and I was like, there's actually also a guy in your state that I think is going to be as good as me or better. Wow. And I was like, he's in high school and he's in Iowa, and I don't know if anyone really knows who he is. I mean, he posts on this stuff, but I think he can be really good. And I remember he said, because I said, I think he'll be as good as me or better. He's very much surpassed me, but he was like, if that's the case, like, give me his number, I'll call him right now. I think they talked the next day, set up a visit, and obviously the rest is history. And I mean, they're doing great things with, like you said, having the right situation where Kevin can come in and do what he needs with Mike, and the coach is receptive and open to other people working with him. I mean, that's huge.
Yeah. I mean, I think his name's Ray. I forgot his last name right now, but I mean, he's a really cool dude. I met him at Drake Relays and at the Olympic Trials last year, and it's just really cool to have a guy like that who's willing to just facilitate and help out and kind of understand through Mike, like what he needs through practice and through a competition, and be open and willing. I think a lot of times those collegiate coaches can get their ego hurt a little bit if their athletes are trying to seek outside help. But I mean, I had that similar situation where I had a coach where I wasn't getting what I needed at where I was at, and I hired Kevin privately and was able to work with him after my Tommy John rehab and stuff. And so that was allowing me to be a forward thinker and learn new things and take it to the next level. And then same thing, like you said, the rest is history with what I've been able to do with Jordan, and Nevin as well has far surpassed me as well. And it's just because I was able to have that leeway in college to work with a private coach, take those ideas and apply them in our own way, in person, every day, 6 days a week for 5 years. And you see what happens with that consistent training. But, I just give credit to like the coach at Iowa and my head coach as well in college for allowing that to happen, because if that forward thinking process and that outreach doesn't happen, then that's where stagnant results, blatant cues that don't really make sense, and just kind of being thrown in with the weight throwers and doing the same exercises as the shot putters and stuff like that's not going to help a javelin thrower. And I think a lot of that too is tough because like when I came in to college, javelin was legal in 17 states in high school. So if you're looking at the talent pool for javelin is also not only very small, but you got to think about the coaches that come from those backgrounds are also limited in javelin knowledge as well. Because I mean, just speaking on the coaching population now, the majority of them probably came from states that javelin wasn't an event in high school. And so it's just a very niche thing. And I think that's why obviously social media has been huge of kind of bringing some more awareness to the sport of javelin in recent years.
I mean, you said pretty much what I was going to say is a lot of these coaches just don't have the background. So to their point, I mean, they only can hear what the best people are saying, and then they're going to do it. And they have a tough job of managing men's and women's side, 4 events, I guess 5 events if you have weight throw as well. But it's just managing a lot of stuff at once. And it was never me maliciously trying to undermine the coach, but it was, as you said, like, there's something else that I need, and I don't expect you to necessarily know because you haven't thrown it. And I personally would feel uncomfortable coaching disc shot hammer. But I was telling a hammer thrower, if they came to me, I would be like, I apologize. I really don't even want to work with you because I don't want to be feeding you information that I don't think is quality. So it wasn't in a bad way. I wasn't trying to do it in a way that would offend anyone, but it was just in a way that this is the one time I'm going to get this opportunity. And for me, especially, that was at that point in time, 1 year. I'm doing this 1 year and this is all I get for the rest of my life. So I'm not going to go with just whatever status quo is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, listen to you guys talk. It makes me think of just how different the javelin community is in comparison to like sports that I've worked with, or like just kids going out on their own wanting to find some type of individual coach or trainer and then bringing it to their school coach, collegiate coach, high school coach, whatever it is, and having them buy in and show like that passion towards wanting to get better and going above and beyond trying to find somebody to help them if that's not what they're getting. And then the majority of population I work with, just high school baseball, they're coming in and they're telling us what their coach made them do the day before, the morning of, or what they have planned. Like today, pitchers and catchers starts up for a high school team that we work with pretty closely tomorrow. And it kind of seems like all the work that we do gets flushed out the window because they start with like a 5 mile run and then they go do their catching and they're exhausted and then they get worse at their sport. So it is cool to see that you guys have a little bit more of a unique approach with just how you can communicate with your coaches, because it's tough to manage a full team, like 20 to 30 individuals that all have to kind of do the same thing. Like they're required to do their lifting. And if they're gone for the 6 months or whatever semester and they come back and they're beat up, then we kind of have to start from ground zero and figure out what the hell went wrong the last couple months.
I mean, I think the part that is nice about javelin, as Dan said, is it's a bit more niche. So it's almost like a willingness, as Coach Ray is doing, is a willingness to accept or understand that like his strength is going to be probably in other events. Where in baseball, it's hard to tell someone who's coached or played baseball their entire life that you don't know how to coach it when they're maybe who knows what age. Where that's like with javelin, if you've never thrown it, you may be more inclined to say, hey, if this guy really seems like they want to get better, I'll let them kind of venture off somewhere else. But I and being a baseball player myself, I can already imagine, and I've lived the practices you're discussing, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
It's a lot of the coaches, I think as Dan was saying, like the forward thinking, I think that is what baseball is missing the most. Now, there's definitely some great coaches out there that are trying to expand the sport and trying to make it better as years go on, but there's just hundreds of thousands potentially of coaches that just always are stuck in we did it this way 40 years ago, so we're going to keep doing it this way. And they're just kind of stuck. Football is pretty much the same way too. Yeah, football is live or die by the barbell. Like no matter what, like they're squatting and cleaning and benching. Like that's what they're gonna do.
Yeah. So Scott, talk a little bit about, obviously we know that first year at Iowa State gets canceled. Talk about the COVID year. What went into that year? What went into your massive jump in performance, and then your experience at D1 Nationals and at Olympic Trials?
We did we made do with what we had at that point in time. Obviously, everybody was doing that. We were fortunate that Bill had access to a small weight room where we could go with like very tiny groups of people, and we were able to work out there, and any throwing and a lot of stuff we would try to do outside as much as we could. But I would go to a middle school track with because it was grass in the middle. There's no runway. It was just a very, very beat up track with grass in the middle, but that was where all the throwing took place until I went back to school. And I only needed one semester to finish my degree, so I was gone from March of 2020 to February of 2021. So I almost had a full calendar year where I was not on campus.
Wow.
And I was just working with Bill and Kevin at that time and just ingraining everything that had made that jump from early December to March when the season got canceled, when I went outside and people were shocked. People were shocked. I think I have video of me throwing where people just see the person that I was in the fall and the person that came out in that spring, even just from ingraining the dead arm and working on those things we just talked about earlier. I mean, that was just building on that and everything that I saw in that time before the season got canceled. But then when we came back, it was a pretty quick turnaround, and I really had no idea. I don't like measuring in practice. I just never been someone that really measured in practice. I maybe get a ballpark, And for me, I guess it doesn't really matter as long as the meet is going up. I kind of just know the general vicinity I'm throwing in, and if I throw past that, then that's good. But in dealing with the stuff I dealt with in baseball, like extreme anxiety about pitching and performing, like I felt in javelin that made me, I guess it's a little corny to say, almost like a superpower in a way, is that I would throw way further in competition than I did in meets, or in practice, excuse me. And I would feel that same type of feeling, but I would just get an insane level of adrenaline that even like now, like I think about sometimes, I'm like, I wish I had something that would replicate that, because that was really awesome. But I opened the season with 65 something at Texas, and I kind of got stuck in the 65 to 67 range most of the season. But I had, and this, I'll shout out one of my roommates, Thomas Pollard, was like someone I would talk to, and he like really believed that I could throw 70, and like I would sit on the couch and tell him like, I'm throwing 70, like I know I can do 70. I know every meet I'm throwing 65, 66, 67, whatever, but I know I can throw 70. And I remember before that conference meet, the coaches were talking to him because they knew that we lived together, and he was like, they asked him how they thought Scott would do, and he goes, I think he's going to throw 70. And it was, again, goes down to the last throw. It was the sixth one. I think I was in third place at that point in time, and I got the crowd going, and I threw it, and it was, I think the best throw was maybe 67 mid before that, and I threw 72-12 the last throw, and that moved me into second. And Logan from Kansas State, who I haven't spoken to in a while, but we were good friends, he had thrown 73, which was his PR too. But at that point, 72-12 was the second best throw the whole season in the Big 12. It just happened that he threw 73 the same meet, so I wasn't able to beat him. But I mean, that was life changing. I'll say that was definitely a life changing throw. Was like, that takes you from the tier of where a lot of Division I throwers are in the mid upper 60s a little bit to like, I don't know how many spots I moved up, but that moved me way up in the nation. So that was really incredible time.
Yeah, that's awesome. I remember that throw too, because for those of you guys who don't know, maybe if I clip this and put it on the on the Instagram, but Scott actually was wearing a backwards hat during this throw, and when he hit his block, his hat fell off and he caught it. And then it went 72. And it was like, dude, I remember I think I was like, I don't know. How old were you? Like 23 at that point?
22 or 23, yeah.
Yeah, so I was like 20, struggling through my college career. And I just remember being like so fired up at that video. And then just showing everyone at the field house that day at practice, like, dude, look at this, dude. He threw a 7-meter PR and he caught his hat. I was like, this is crazy.
I didn't even know that happened until I like went on Twitter after, and people like the school was tweeting the clip, and people were just like going crazy on the thing, and I had no idea that would even happen, because I mean, it was just, I remember I still never saw the throw really. Like I just remember like, I guess it was because the hat was in my eyes and I like looked down after it happened, but I just remember like seeing the scoreboard and like having a full body reaction that I was like, oh my God, like not only was it 70, but it was multiple meters past that. So that was just really crazy. But some people will still sometimes talk to me about that video, which is like, I guess, cool to have a moment that was like that. Be like, yeah, remember when this happened? Like, yeah, it's probably the best thing I'll ever do. So that's fine. But
the highlight.
Yeah.
So then you end up going into Division I Nationals, and then you came in ninth. And so you threw what, like 70 meters?
70, 91, I think, if I remember right.
Yeah. So how did that feel, kind of coming in at like ninth place? Because I know that we talked about like ninth place is division, or not Division II. It's second team All-American. Top 8 is first team. And I remember that specifically because that was the first year I took Jordan to nationals, and he came in ninth as well. And so I was pissed because I was like, man, my Division I guy that I was rooting for came in ninth, and then we came in ninth. And it was just like, ninth is just that tough spot because you make the final, but then you're the only person in the final to not get the Division I All-American plaque.
Yeah, so I can discuss that whole postseason quickly. I don't want to extend the podcast too long because I know we have other stuff to discuss as well. But the regional meet is, I was very big into what you were talking about. Is I went back like 15 years and figured out what it would take, or what was the 12th spot to make nationals. Because I knew as long as my goal was to make nationals and throw 70 that year. That was like the biggest goal in my mind, and it was very clear like that's what I wanted to do. So I went to the regionals, and then I was like, okay, it'll probably take 66, 67 to go. So first throw I threw 70. I was winning. It was 105 degrees at Texas A&M, and it was sliding on the ground, and it was not an easy day to throw. But the first throw I threw 70, and I remember everyone was shaking my hand and saying, "Congrats, you made it to nationals," because everyone knew it was not a day that was going to be like a big bombing day. So I got third there, and then my goal when I went to nationals was I wanted to throw 70 again. I was like, 70 pretty much will make the final. First throw was 70. So I was like, ended up, I think I was in seventh maybe, and Benji Phillips from North Dakota State passed me on his last throw by like a foot or 2 feet maybe, and he ended up knocking me from eighth to ninth. And I remember in that moment I was really angry about it because of what you said. I would have loved, and my mom was like, "You threw with all those people. Why did they get the trophies and you didn't?" And I'm like, "I know I didn't get the trophy. Don't remind me." But yeah, but the more I'm removed from it, the more I don't care. I mean, I do care. I would love to have it, but it's kind of, I was ranked 14th. I was one of the only people that was under 6 feet tall. If you look at people below me, I'm not going to name names because it's not like I'm trying to, they were better throwers than me, but some of the people I beat would shock you that I was able to beat them at that point in time. And that's when I've really put these things in perspective, is like, they were had every reason in the world to beat me. I had thrown for a fraction of their career, way smaller, no anything. And being able to do that and make the final, like my goal was make the final and throw 70. So when you leave, if you made the final and you threw 70, it's hard to cry over not having the trophy as much as I would like that. That's kind of the perspective I had. And trials was just, I was the 24th person in. So I was, anyone I could pass would be great, because then I just threw better than my seed. There was no way I could do worse. And I got 18th. I mean, that was a very hard day to throw. That was before they put the scoreboard up. So there was wind howling, like headwind in the thing, and I just threw them all to the moon, and it went nowhere. So
yeah, Hayward is a tough place to throw. I know that a lot of people don't necessarily love throwing there. Like, I mean, that a lot of people last year at the trials were slipping all around. I know Vetter a couple years ago, they had the either Worlds or a Diamond League meet there, and he was trying to have them like change the surface of the track or something like that, because it's just like, when you're a high-level thrower coming in with all that speed and throwing into a straight headwind, and a lot of times the track is very slippery, people are slipping all over the place. Like, that's the first time I've ever seen Jordan slip and fall, was last year at Eugene. And then same thing, Mike, same thing with him. He was slipping and falling and stuff. So, I don't know. It's kind of unfortunate for it being as nice of a stadium as it is right, that the javelin just is not great there, which is another reason why too, like the U.S. championship meet record is like 83 or something like that, which isn't that, it's not crazy, it's like, so I mean, hopefully we could fix it in the future and get the U.S. meet record a little bit further than that. But so I know that we talked a little bit about how you started the Through the Point podcast. That was the first javelin-only podcast ever. And so why did you start that, and how was your experience doing that podcast?
So at Iowa State, I originally took the GRE, like a graduate entrance exam. Even though my undergrad was in business economics, I've learned eventually that the business school needed a different test, but I'd already taken the other test and studied for it, so I ended up having to find a different degree to do. So the degree was called Professional and Strategic Communication. So it wasn't in the business school; it was in like the School of Journalism and Communication. But they had an option to do either a professional project or a thesis, and I was intrigued by the idea of a professional project because it's not a thesis, so that's cool.
Yeah, it's no writing.
And the first thing I wanted to do was do some type of javelin camp at the Park District. It wasn't really ironed out, but there was just something. I knew javelin was a topic that I wanted to do because it was pretty much all I thought about at that point in time. Yeah. So I knew I wanted to do something like that, and one of my advisors suggested a podcast because people had actually. It was a little, and now it makes way more sense because it's a lot more clear to grade that, because you could kind of record it and like talk about the process of doing it and stuff like that. So I'm glad that they suggested that, because it wasn't my idea. I'm not really someone that even likes to give my opinion on things, especially not publicly. I'm not huge on that, or even hearing myself talk, but I'm definitely not someone that thought I would be doing a podcast. But when they said that, I was just like, that's actually kind of a really great idea. And that's how it just went from there. And the goal they said or minimum I needed to do was 8 to 10 episodes, and I think I did 60 or 70.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So I was doing one a week for over a year. I posted every day on the Instagram for probably 2 years. So it was amazing. I mean, I was just, and that kind of like that season, obviously I ended up performing very well, but there was a part of me that thought people viewed me, especially when I had only thrown 60, as like the podcast guy.
Yeah.
So I was glad that season kind of validated myself as an athlete as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's big. And I think that too, I mean, something that me and Brett have talked about a lot is like having that imposter syndrome. Because when we first started coaching together, Brett was 22 and I was 23. And so, you know, you're put in charge of these adults or these college athletes. And we were basically in college ourselves.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of like, I felt like that a little bit too when I first started javelin, because a lot of people were saying how, oh, you know, like Nevin only threw 60 at the time, and so that's a pretty achievable number for anybody. And then Jordan was just really, really talented, and he was going to throw far no matter who his coach was. And then, you know, obviously last year after doing javelin for like, I think it was almost close to a year, probably 9 months by that point, then Jordan throws 83 and then 84, and then Nevin throws 67, which puts him at like that, you know, top 10 in Division 2, which is then now both of them had then improved 20 meters in 4 years of my coaching. So that's how I felt too, is like I felt like last year was my validation for doing this podcast and doing the Javelin brand and having a YouTube channel and stuff like that. Like I definitely felt like that inside of me all of like last off season, and dealing with the haters was tough. And now it's like I'm so confident in what I'm doing now because of the result that I've gotten and the positive feedback that I've gotten from people. And I know that you had a lot of positive feedback, and you were somebody too that, you know, sometimes the javelin community could get a little hostile in some regard because, you know, everyone has their opinion, especially when you're higher level coaching and stuff like that. And you were somebody that just really bridged the gap between a lot of different people within the javelin community, which was awesome because, you know, you just had coaches and athletes from all across the world, really. I know you had some international people, you had some people on there that were, you know, from one thought process or another. And I think at the end of the day, everyone just loved the Through the Point podcast. So that was really cool. That was really cool what you were able to do. And then continue to go out and have a big year yourself.
And I know when we were prepping, one of the questions you were thinking about was what challenges I faced. And this is maybe more of a compliment to the javelin community and less of me thinking that I'm the best. But I don't think there was really any challenges. It was actually unbelievably easy. And they were so willing to, not easy to execute, but to get the guests to book. I mean, I made a list of people on my phone that I think these would be cool. Like Kara Winger, who I could talk about Kara for a long time, and I know you mentioned you had her as a guest as well. And something I'll just a little tangent on it quick was when I was going post collegiately, Kara paid for a flight for me to go to Tucson to throw, and I don't know if anyone even knows that or if I ever made a post about it, but I was like not going to go because that was also when gas prices were insane. So the flight was literally like $1,000, and I think she traveled a lot, so she had a ton of points on it. But she was like, if you can find a way to stay and get to the meet, I'll cover that for you. So that's someone that at that point in time, I'd spoken to her a lot, but we'd never met in person. So, I mean, that's just one example of how the javelin community was. But with knowing how accomplished she is, like, I thought that was a reach of a guest. And I just typed a DM on an account that probably had a few hundred followers. And she said, sure. Yeah. So that was kind of how it was with everybody.
I mean, I think that's the good thing, too, about the javelin community is that no one's really in this for the money. And so we all just love the sport and talking about the sport and sharing our expertise with the sport. So it's like, you know, you're gonna ask an Olympian to be on your show. You know, if it's someone like Usain Bolt, he might be like, all right, it's gonna be $1,000. But then, you know, Kara Winger will be like, yeah, sure, I'll gladly do it for free. You know, and it's just like that's just how the javelin is, because like we've talked about, it's a niche thing, and people do it for the passion, not for money.
Yeah, that's completely my experience. And as you mentioned, that was my goal, was to have people from all different either skill levels or places of the world or just views on how the throw should be executed. Like, I didn't want there to be fighting in my comments over what you think the throw needs to be, and it more just bring attention to the throw in the way that it did. And it grew really well. I mean, Instagram, I still get likes every day on posts from there that it's just, I don't even know who's still feeling the profile or if I'm still in like the algorithm on it, but it's really amazing. But it really is a more credit to the community that they were willing to do that. And everyone I thought was a reach answered probably within the day and said yes.
Wow.
So there wasn't many challenges. It was, obviously we've talked about editing podcasts, not the most fun thing in the world. They're like just doing all those things, booking it, planning it. I interviewed Mackenzie Little, and it was at like such a weird hour because she was in Australia.
Wow.
So I was doing it at like 1 a.m. my time, which I'm not a night person at all, but we figured something out, or I don't remember when it was, something like that. But I mean, it was just great. Like that was maybe the hardest thing I had to do, and that's not very hard. So it was, credit to the community for everyone being really great.
That's awesome. All right, so Scott, you wrapped up the Through the Point podcast a little bit after your career at Iowa State finished up. Talk to us a little bit about how you're still involved in the sport now, and what do you do for work? Do you still train, stuff like that?
So quickly, I threw for a year post-collegiately, and I didn't end up PRing, but I think my average meet was about 3.5 or 4 meters better. So I was throwing very consistently better. So I would say I was a better thrower at that point in time. I was just less than a meter short of throwing a PR, and there were many, many complications that went into that year. Canceled flights. I took $60 Uber to O'Hare, got to the gate, canceled my flight, and then had to take a $60 Uber back home. And then I ended up throwing at Wisconsin Lutheran, a Division III, in 40-degree weather the next day when I was supposed to be at Arizona State. So it was a very complex, and I spent the night in the Kansas City airport. So it was not the most fun experience of my life, but I ended up dealing with some injuries, and I planned to throw in 2023, but the same nagging injuries were coming out, and I just could not get it to feel the way I wanted to. And I'm someone and that's kind of what ended up with the podcast too, is if I'm not all the way in it, I just would rather not do it at all. I felt that it would be a disservice when I was doing a podcast a week to now do one a month or just drop them randomly. I felt I'm going to drop them once a week or I'm not dropping them at all.
Yeah.
So now I'm coaching at a Division III school, North Park University in Chicago, where I live. And then I have my own business on the side that I don't know if we don't necessarily have to get into, but I have a couple things going on, which is pretty cool. So I am involved in the sport. I'm very big into golf now, so I'm not training javelin, but I'll still lift. And I just still actually do a lot of mobility ability because I would rather not be extremely tight as I get older. Like I enjoy being limber the way I was when I was throwing. So definitely got to check in on the back bridge when I can, but that's pretty much what I'm up to now. And I'll shout out, I have a bunch of throwers I work with, but Tyler Olson is one of my throwers, and he's a big fan of yours, Dan. He always talks about it, and he'll be in your comments and asking you questions. He asks me, and I give the same answer that you give. I'm like, Dan's going to tell you what I tell you, so why are you going to ask him? Like, just ask me. But he's a big fan of yours, so he was thought it was pretty cool when I was coming on here. So I have a bunch of throwers I work with, but I'll shout out him because he's the biggest fan. But the rest of them are great too. So. I think this year we're actually going to have a more, because it's a Division III in the middle of Chicago, so you can't expect that there's a lot of javelin going on there. But with this year, I think we actually have a group that can do pretty well, so I'm excited for that.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, so good luck, Scott, as a coach, and good luck, Tyler, this year. Make sure
he's gonna love this part. He's gonna love it.
Oh, he will love this.
You gotta clip this part and just send it to
Tyler.
him.
If you when you PR this year, make sure you tag me and I'll share it on my story. So good luck. You got any other closing remarks?
Oh, that's it.
All right, Scott, thanks for having... Oh, my God, I almost said it again. I always say thanks for having us on. Through the Point podcast. But, Scott, thanks for coming on. There's a great episode. Right up our alley of just talking about baseball, javelin, and podcasting. I think
that's all it is.
Yeah, literally.
It's just textbook.
Yeah, can you just come on every week now?
I felt like this could have gone for a few episodes too. There's so many things that we probably could have added in, but I didn't want to keep you here all night. So I appreciate you guys having me, though.
Yeah, of course. Definitely got to have you back on in the future for sure.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Scott. Best of luck with everything. We'll see you again soon.
Absolutely.